Both Courtney and I's phones are dead. It's what time? Can you show? Okay, 12:25. When it hits 1, you guys just come get us.
After you.
Okay. As you can see, this is really creepy. Hello? If you're down here, we're just coming to talk and hang out a little bit. Really bad vibe. Let's come over here. Oh my God, this is terrifying. Okay guys, so we're down here underneath the museum in the tunnels, in the side tunnel. Very creepy in here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run this EVP session. Is there anybody down here in the tunnels with us? Wait. Hello? What the was that? No way is this door shut. Oh my God, I'm gonna have a panic attack. Hello? Well, this door is... Just wait.
Call that.
Do you have a phone?
No, mine's dead.
Mine's dead too. Jesus!
All haunted places have a story to tell. It can be tragic, it can be scary, and it can be very dangerous. This is Colin Browen, and these are the Paranormal Files.
The museum is located in a building of the former St. Joseph State Mental Hospital and is named after George Glore. Glore was an employee of the hospital and built life-size models of some of the devices formerly used for mental health treatment. As you tour the museum, you'll find all kinds of artifacts like medical equipment, old staff uniforms, photographs, and artwork and writing created by the patients.
This is going to be where the tunnels, they used to transport people back and forth from building to building. And so this is a way to keep people out of the weather and then also people out of the way of people, the public eye. And we're also going to see the autopsy room. Are you ready for this?
I don't know. What is it? It's the morgue.
It's the morgue and the autopsy room.
Yeah.
So you're going to see all original.
We were curious to see if there were any spirits hanging out with us. Anybody is here with us? Rock one of these chairs. Although nothing moved the chairs, I did feel a chill in certain areas. And as you continue to explore the history of mental illness therapy, you can't help but feel eerie vibes throughout the halls that once housed patients. You can explore the historic and bone-chilling halls for yourself.
Tonight on the Paranormal Files, we're at a very special location here in Missouri. This is a museum dedicated to the history of psychiatry. But it's not just a... Did you hear that? Hold on, there's like a... Hello? Okay. But this isn't just your average museum. This museum was actually an old asylum. It's an out-of-commission mental hospital building from the State Lunatic Asylum that was built right here on these grounds. 3,000 deaths here. probably many more that were undocumented. Tonight we've been given access to the Glore Psychiatric Museum. We're here to explore the building, to investigate its haunts, including areas of the building like the morgues, the tunnels beneath the asylum buildings, and this entire surgical lobotomy unit itself. So if you're watching right now, be warned, this episode goes into some very graphic and gruesome detail relating to psychiatry and a lot of outdated old practices. And this building is extremely active. Even in our interviews that we just conducted, you will not believe some of the stuff you're about to see. Anyways though, welcome to the Paranormal Files. Okay everybody, so I've got this bizarre, Courtney called it a wedding hairstyle. It's hot out, Mary tied my hair up, trying to protect me.
Show them the twist on this part. Ooh, pretty.
Do I look like a beautiful bride?
You do. Yeah.
Here's Courtney, she just sustained a brutal mosquito bite on her forehead.
Right on the noggin.
Here's Mary.
Hi.
We're here outside of the Glore Museum. We're about to go in, none of us have been inside yet.
Nope.
I will say though, it is bizarre that there is a jail, an active jail, prison right behind it. Don't you guys think?
Yeah, really weird.
I've
There's
never.
some prisoners walking the track right
Yeah,
there.
you can see inmates right now walking around outside. There's a lot of mosquitoes. But it is strange. I've never seen an abandoned asylum building inside of a jail.
No.
Have you?
No.
It's right there. This building.
That's
literally. No.
No.
That's in the jail. The
I
prison.
get what you mean. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I get to go in there?
That's dope.
Interesting though.
Yeah, that would.
So
that's weird though.
we just flew the drone, got some exterior shots. We're gonna go inside now. I'm covered in sweat. You guys ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Let's go on in. Oh my God, I'm dripping in sweat actually.
Oh.
I'm gonna tell you guys, just getting the B-roll around here, I'm all alone in this side of the complex. There is a vibe here. There's definitely energy. It's almost like the spirits in this building are calling out to me in these windows. You can see there are tons of windows. Nobody's been in this building for a number of years. It's completely overgrown and abandoned. I have a really good feeling about tonight. As you guys know, asylums, psychiatric facilities, they always have a very strong energy, sometimes, oftentimes, a very negative energy, a very manic, sad, oppressive, angry energy. So I don't know what we're getting into tonight, but I'm excited. It's time to go in. Let's do this, guys. Go for it.
Hi, my name is Sarah Parks. We are at the Glore Psychiatric Museum, part of the St. Joseph Museum, up on 3rd floor.
And what was the 3rd floor?
So the 3rd floor is our old surgery ward. So right now, currently for the museum, it houses all of our patient artwork and a few smaller things like nursing rules and a mock-up of what a patient room would have looked like. Since we are in the medical surgical building, a lot of people want to see, you know, what patients would have looked and lived and had all of their experiences. Unfortunately, we don't have access to those buildings, but we have a mock-up of what they could have been.
And just as a broad overview of I'm not going to ask many questions, I'm just going to have
Totally
you talk, but what is the museum? Because I don't think people are going to come into this knowing why it's,
Probably not.
you know.
Yeah, so the St. Joseph Museum started out as a kids museum actually in 1927, and has over time in St. Joe acquired a bunch of different collections over the years. 2014, the Glore Psychiatric Museum became a part of that. But the Glore Psychiatric Museum was actually made about 1968 by George Glore. He was a occupational therapist and had been tasked with having his therapy individuals make and create original mental health practices from about the 17th to 18th century as part of an open house to try to destigmatize mental health in the community and kind of show people what the state hospital was doing. Kind of grew from there because people loved them. They're actually still downstairs on display. So we've kind of grown the exhibits ever since then, really. And it's really one of the only few psychiatric museums in the country.
And what was this building before it was a museum?
So this building that we're in right now is the medical surgical building. So patients would have been admitted here, given, a physical check over psychology wise, and then assigned to different staff or different wards from there. Also, if you needed anything medically done while you were here, like, tonsils removed, anything really like electroshock therapy was also done here. Our lobotomies were also done here. It was pretty self-functioning because the state hospital was about 3 miles outside of St. Joe at the time. You can't tell that now because we're about in the heart of it currently, but it was pretty self-sufficient because it had to be.
And I mean to say, this was an actual asylum,
Yes.
a state hospital.
Yes. So the campus that this building sits on was part of a larger facility, usually like 13 to 15 different buildings. Most of them are now currently part of the Missouri State Correction Facility. So there's razor wire around all of their buildings right now. That wouldn't have been here until about 1993. So this was originally founded with one building in 1874 as the State Lunatic Asylum number 2. Useful terms in 1800s. Hollywood has done a lot to make those negative terms, so they changed their names a lot. So over the years it was like St. Joseph State Hospital number 2, or just the St. Joseph State Hospital. But yes, up until actually 1993, this was part of that facility for mental health. They moved across the street in 1993 and are still operating. It's one of 5 that we had in Missouri.
So just random question. The prisoners, the inmates, are in old state hospital buildings.
They are. The oldest ones.
Really?
Yep. This is the newest building on
crazy.
campus. This was built in 1968.
Couldn't imagine.
Nope,
Especially if it's haunted over
they
there.
say it's super haunted over there too.
Really?
So, yep.
Have you heard any stories from people that work there?
Lots from prison guards. They have had a few buildings that they don't even go into anymore because they just get completely freaked out by them. I heard one guard has seen like full apparitions. Are in buildings that were originally wards, so much more probably activity than we have over here. Just functions of the building and age-wise. They have buildings that were built in 1874, and like I said, this one was built in 1960s. So
crazy. Yeah. Imagine being in prison.
They have guard housing is the old doctor housing too.
Wow.
So
well, okay, let's start the tour.
All
Go
right.
for it. That's a great introduction.
So this is one of the surgery rooms. You can see we've got nursing information in it now. We tried to keep a lot of the old fixtures, so you'll see that light board actually was part of the state hospital. There's plugs and knobs and switches all over 3rd floor for old equipment. I'll show you a couple in the hallway too that are pretty neat. This is what we call ward quiet, just because nursing is a lot different now than it was then. And a few of the things that we talk about in here too are, about respecting people's privacy and like HIPAA laws, because with the state of Missouri too, any mental health facility records are sealed forever. It doesn't even apply to HIPAA where if you die and 50 years later they're open to the public, they're still sealed. So you still have to go through the court system, which a lot of people don't know. And I really like 3rd floor just because it gives more of that personal connection to people, because we have a lot of the patient art and the nursing artifacts. So they don't become 1 in 4 people suffer from mental illness. They don't become a statistic, they become real people.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite stories about nursing though is a lot of the time it was super unregulated in the beginning. So we have pictures of like nurses with giant like bowls just full of medication and just like passing that out to patients. Super unregulated and terrible, but the whole history of mental health is just a big game of trial and error, honestly. So that's what we'll see when we start talking about 2nd floor too. It's the whole, does this work? No, okay, we'll stop doing that. Try something else.
So these original?
These are nursing uniforms.
From this building?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of you'll see like the American Red Cross is a big thing because they just were super understaffed, especially after the World Wars. psychiatry and like mental health wasn't a like practice like specifically for people. You just were a medical doctor. So especially during the World Wars when people got drafted, for those medical reasons, we lost a lot of our staff and had to rely on volunteers. So some of the iffy practices came about then too. Just people weren't trained, we weren't staffed. Original staffing numbers when we opened, first day we had 275 patients. We built it for 250. Peak population had 3,000 people.
Wow.
Yep. So.
Would you think that some of these people who wore like these outfits have passed on?
Some of our artifacts are from people that probably have passed on. We just got in a new nurse's cape too that was from a family.
Like this was worn by someone in the 1940s. So that's working, so she's obviously probably passed. So.
Yep.
This is interesting. I didn't think about how the nurses would clean.
Yeah.
Like the stairs. Because you don't have that now. You have like
Yeah,
cleaning people. Yeah.
Yes.
That's,
Yeah, they all have definitely kept you busy.
It's a haunting photo.
That is the original staircase that's downstairs.
Oh, the one that's
Yeah,
up in
that's
the
the
wall?
one that's downstairs. Yep.
Wow.
You think that's haunting? Look at these.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh yeah, and this is just the first room.
So like I said, most of this is all patient artwork.
Very talented.
Very much so. A lot of people too, that's one of the things, a lot of people just assume that if you have a mental illness, you're mentally disabled. I've had to explain that a lot, that that's not always the case. Like, you know, people can have severe depression, anxiety, and relatively function pretty normally and do really well in other things. Like most everybody that lived here had a job on the grounds. So whether that was like running our farm or helping, you know, do some other things like our occupational therapies downstairs in the basement, we'll see a few of the things that they made in like our weaving and woodworking and steel shops. But I mean, some people, yeah, probably weren't very self-sufficient and just existed. And that's totally fine. You have that whole spectrum of people. So these are two, all of these rockers are really original, but this one was from about 1965. This is when they started using the fiberglass in the 60s. This metal one was used a lot because it was untippable.
So these were all used by patients in the facilities?
Yes.
Wow.
And they tried to make them, you can see in that picture there, was the men's ward, about 1900. Originally they, you know, didn't really understand that this may be a life sentence for people. They wanted to really have you come in, get better, and then go back to your community. So they made them look like home. So you can see a lot of the stuff is super elaborate, like Victorian style, especially with the staircase downstairs, like they made the building that way. Some people think it like was supposed to help ground you, like have that, you know, comfort, but yeah, I just wanted to make it feel like home.
Wow. All right.
You ready to do second floor?
I'm ready to do second
Okay.
floor.
That's one of the original awards.
That's really cool.
So, I guess before we go to the second floor, hauntings on this floor. What are
Yes.
some reports?
So reports on third floor. There's been a lot of EVPs, so a lot of mumbling or patients and or like men, women voices. We actually have had a group that has set music boxes, the ones that are like motion detected, up towards the ceiling, so no one's actually just like walking around them. Near our chapel room up here, and played like gospel music, and the music box reacted a bunch to that. We've had people get cussed out up on third floor before, or told really firmly to get out of here. Yeah, lots of stuff like that.
Wow.
It is pretty dark too, so as we leave, I'll shut off the main light. And we can...
Oh, yeah. Behind you.
Yeah. Mostly the level of darkness it will be. So this is second floor. We use this floor to talk about the history of treatment methods. So it does pan around the room and then go back in that.
Let's just talk about all this, I guess.
All right. So we are currently in the original Glore exhibit room. Like I said, George Glore had some patients and he worked on creating these to show the public where mental health treatment really started and how far they had come and what the mission of the state hospital was really doing for people. Unfortunately, a lot of the time in the 1800s, it wasn't great. It was mostly restraining people because they didn't know how to deal with them, didn't know what was wrong. And a lot of the time medically, we were still figuring out what germs were. So that kind of puts that in perspective for people. We didn't even know what germs were. We were still bloodletting at that time because we thought your body was controlled by 4 humors in your blood, and if those were out of whack, you were out of whack. So a few of the things you'll notice are just restraints, period. A couple of the things like the water tub behind me were meant to shock people back into their senses. Kind of along the same thoughts of how we think like scaring people is going to get rid of their hiccups. It's just to reset your body to normal. That's what they thought needed to happen. There's a couple things in the wing over here. Along the same lines, there's a sensory deprivation chair. They thought if you took away all of your senses, you'd get back to normal. So they left you in it for a while. You couldn't see or really move around a lot. Some people think it looks like an shock chair. It's not. It's not an electric chair. There's a spinning chair too that was supposed to take all those humors from the middle of your body to your extremities. It really just made people sick. It's a spinning chair. It's like a Ferris ride. A lot of people too will look at the restraints, and this one's a replica, that one is original, and there's one on 3rd floor that's metal, that they're all called Utica cribs. And they would have been used to restrain patients that were harmed to themselves, especially at night, or other staff or anything like that, really is why people used restraints. But it really goes back to one of those sections is basically just a prison cell. So a lot of the time, France especially was really known for bedlam. Bedlam they used as a mental prison, basically, and the aristocracy would actually parade through like a zoo for people, which is terrible. And a lot of this, obviously, we're looking at hindsight and is terrible from what practices we would do, but that was completely normal for them, unfortunately. So a lot of that prison system carried over even into America. Our state hospital system really started getting reformed with Dorothea Dix. Her portrait is downstairs, and Thomas Kirkbride. They were pretty instrumental in transforming how these facilities were created. Dorothea Dix started in Massachusetts and noticed that a lot of the people that had mental illnesses were just in prison, and they were treated terribly in chains and just shackled up and beaten sometimes into obedience because they didn't know how else to deal with them. She was like, they need to be treated like people. We need to have these big institutions and to give them better care. Thomas Kirkbride allowed that to happen in his building design. The main center building, which we only have the centerpiece of it now, would have had 2 wings that extended off in 45-degree angles, basically. So these places needed lots of land to be able to do that. But that gave each room windows for fresh air and sunlight, which obviously do positively affect our mental health. They're not cures or anything, but having them definitely helps, put us in a better mood. But that was kind of their plan to try to figure out at least a start for better treatment. So as you move through time, there's a swing of, it kind of is a circle of these institutions. They got really big, they got defunded. We tried to do more experimental treatment because we were defunded in lack of staff, and now they're back in the prison system. So it kind of goes through that cycle. We'll look at some of the other stuff. You guys want to see the chairs? They're back here. We also have leeching things because that's fun. That's the tranquilizer chair.
Wow.
And then this is the one you'd spin in. We have, is he on here? He is. George Glore sat in the chair, and the director of the hospital got to spin him around, so I think he was a fan of that day.
So a lot of these are replicas.
Yes, a lot of these are replicas. Most of the time because they were either not being used at the time or had gotten rid of. We know of some actual tranquilizer chairs that were used in New York. Most people don't sell them to museums or anything. I don't really know 100% why. Mostly because they've gotten rid of them. Obviously they're terrible practices, so.
Right.
But yeah, most of these are replicas of treatments and stuff.
What do you think is the most barbaric thing up here?
You know, my very least favorite thing is lobotomies, just because it's the most extreme thing we've probably ever done as humans.
And you guys did lobotomies here.
We did. So, like I was saying, you know, patient records and stuff are pretty much sealed. The only information really we have is either from, you know, patient art or doctor's notes or treatment like practices. We know lobotomies happened because we have procedures for treatment of patient care before and or after that treatment. Same with electroshock therapy. We have those procedures that staff was supposed to follow to prep them and then aftercare. So I think they've done research and about 20 lobotomies were confirmed to happen here. I don't know if there's any more or who those people were, obviously. But we did have that. And we have some public record, like some newspapers and stuff would, and some death records obviously have State Hospital number 2 or Lunatic Asylum number 2 on their death record. So we can kind of backtrace a little bit that way. It gets a little tricky with how much information you can get, but about 3,000 or so people we think were buried on site. I can talk to you a little bit more about that in the morgue because we have headstones and stuff down there.
Wow.
Electroshock therapy is a little different because they still do that as a practice. It just morphed a little bit with how they used it. Originally it was tried to be developed for schizophrenia. Now it's for major, like severe clinical depression. So they still do use it, but very sparingly. It's usually if medications and stuff like that doesn't work.
I had no idea that they still did it.
They do.
Crazy.
These were by one person?
Yep.
Oh yeah, can you talk about that too?
Yeah, I can talk about the collections. So, like I said, we have a lot of information just from the stuff that patients left, and thankfully they were collecting those things as part of the museum. So these couple things are from collectors. There's a difference between collecting and hoarding that I like to basically summarize with: if you can get rid of it, you're not a hoarder, because you don't have that emotional tie. So if you can throw it away, you can give it to somebody else, you're not a hoarder. Totally fine. We have a collection of 400 and some odd ties from one individual. The cigarette cases are a little bit different. They were a group project collection. One of the patients was super charismatic, got into his head that there was this national collection event, that if you collected 100,000 cigarette cases, the big cigarette companies would donate a wheelchair to the hospital. He got, this was in like the 60s, so obviously everybody smoked. Patients and staff included. So he got 108,000 collected. That's what's in that cage right there. The staff at that point realized that there was no such contest. Bought him one, donated it, let him donate it to his ward anyway. So it's a nice little heartwarming story.
You went through all that.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
There has been
Wow.
some activity around it. There was more when it was on third floor, so I don't know if it was connected to this or third floor. So, but there has been stuff around it before.
But these collections collected by patients.
Yes.
That's a lot of cigarettes, man.
Right.
Holy shit. Could you imagine smoking all
We
those?
also
Just for a
collected
wheelchair.
coins and soda can tabs too. So
Wow.
just lots of collecting things. So we do talk about like vision and EEG machines. So our EEG machine, I think is funny. One, because it's not computer based, it's all like pre-computers. So didn't even really know what we were recording on EEGs at the time. So didn't really understand that, like what the brain waves meant or what the scrolls, any of them really meant. We just knew it was brain activity. They recorded the first EEG in 1924. They didn't identify REM sleep until about the 1950s. So this one has a fun story. A couple of physicians, like really only 2 of them, were trained on how to use it, and they hated each other. So they would hide it from each other all the time. And apparently it got lost in a closet somewhere for like decades and before we found it again.
This machine?
Yeah. So then we talked a little bit about restraints. They did still have modern adaptations to that. So mostly those turned into like mittens or camisoles. Most people know them as straitjackets. But this is a Victorian one. So basically it just looked like a corset. It was made out of really tough material, basically like box springs or bed frames. So you couldn't rip them, and then they sewed them like in a crisscross pattern so you couldn't rip them. Really the only difference between it and like modern straitjackets are modern ones have a tie through your legs so you can't shrug it over your shoulders. Basically just to help move people, because like you and I could move like them then without having too much resistance with someone that's bigger than you, obviously. Dentistries we talk about it a little bit, mostly because they had to be self-sufficient, so they did their own dentistry and stuff like that. But dentistry has had a tie with mental health, so you'll often see a lot of mental patients without teeth or missing teeth. Funny enough, usually if you have like a dental infection or something wrong with your teeth, you also have something else infected in your body or some other ailment. It's a weird connection. They don't know how it works, but it's like one of your first like health sign warnings. The room of ick, which is what our director calls this, because it talks about rectal thermometers and like enemas. Enemas were a big thing because, again, the whole like reset your body. It was to clean out your system. I don't know. I don't get it. Room of ick. That's why it's called that. Hydrotherapy had kind of a development too. It kind of went from that like super intense cold dunk tank to, oh, maybe we'll use the soothing properties of water. Like, you know, hot baths are really nice. And they're really good for people that like have a stressful day. They're just not long-term anything for mental health. So they're not, you know, going to be they can be a treatment method, but they're not a cure or even a long-term treatment method. We had a gutter system that would simulate like rain sounds every once in a while. So sometimes they would, on sunny days, have like the rain sound come through if they put water in the gutters for patients. Kind of interesting. This is more the shock therapy. This is actually, if you want it later, our info on shock therapy treatments.
Wow.
So
This is the actual.
that is the procedures from the book that they did. So shock therapy, like I said, really started as a schizophrenia treatment. They started with like insulin to induce seizures that way. Super tricky and very unstable. You could have patients just flat out die on you if you don't do it correctly. And it's a very short window of time for you to not do it correctly. So they switched to medication to try to induce those. Still pretty risky. Still had patients like fracture bones under those seizures. It's just they were so intense. So they used electricity as a much more stable way to monitor that and implement it. It still looks pretty terrible, but usually you don't feel anything. But it takes you a long time to re-enter like a cognitive state of mind. A lot of people sometimes can go days without remembering what happened, or your short-term memory really is just kaput at that point. But that's really what it was trying to do. It was trying to break those synapses so you didn't have those problems. But as they regrew, obviously that's gonna be an issue because those problems still came back into life. Lobotomies, there's some famous lobotomy patients here on the wall. Rosemary Kennedy is one of them. Pretty famous one. This is why lobotomies are my least favorite thing to talk about, because Rosemary Kennedy was awake during her lobotomy. Most of them were, at least in like the 40s, 50s. Not originally. Originally it was a very complex, very rarely used neurosurgery, and they had to have an anesthetician, be medically trained to do it, removed very little parts of your brain. That ended up morphing later on with the transorbital lobotomy. So Rosemary Kennedy was one of those transorbital lobotomies, and basically they stick a pick, a lot of people call it an ice pick, through the softer orbital bone right here, and then we'll move it around sideways or up and down. Usually they had, with her anyway, stopped going far enough where she couldn't say like her ABCs. So if she started messing up speech, they would stop, and terrible, terrible thing. Howard Doley's one that we talk about too, because he was 12 when he had a lobotomy. They were really done for a lot of different reasons. They were kind of seen as this miracle catch-all, like, oh, you can have a lobotomy, we'll like fix you. And unfortunately they had enough success with people that they kept doing them for a while. But obviously your frontal lobe just completely transforms you personality-wise. It basically makes you not have problem-solving skills at all. So a lot of people, sometimes they just like turned into a vegetable. And that is not what they wanted out of the system. They wanted, you know, those faster treatments to get people in and out, because we were super overcrowded and understaffed. But unfortunately it made people just like completely dependent on these places too. More lighthearted note, also in the 30s and 40s, syphilis was a real big problem in mental health facilities, because syphilis left untreated will eat away at your brain. People don't like know that because it's, you know, super treatable now as a sexually transmitted disease. These hot boxes were made to treat syphilis originally, because syphilis dies out really with you if you have like 104 fever for an extended couple days. These are pretty risky. Obviously, it's like a sauna, but worse. So you could get pretty severe burns that way. So a safer way that they found out was actually to give people malaria, because malaria by then was super treatable. It gave you the 105 fever for a couple days, and then they just treated your malaria and you got better from both diseases. Real weird history for mental
Wow.
health, but
That's crazy.
it's pretty fun. It's just more about lobotomies and some of the instruments and stuff. Phineas Gage is loosely tied to lobotomies because he lived, that's a model of his skull. He was a railroad staff person, basically tamping down before they did dynamite and stuff, or through the tunnel system. But tamping iron went through his skull because they didn't do it correctly. He lived, but it messed up his frontal lobe and completely changed his personality. So it kind of got people wondering, more about how the brain works and all that fun stuff. A lot of the time too, I think it's fun to tell people, like, a lot of what we now think of as like pretty common, like we have a left brain and a right brain. Most people know that now. We didn't know that until 1980.
Wow.
1980.
And this is him?
Homosexuality too. This is Phineas Gage. Homosexuality too was part of a mental illness until 1990.
Wow.
Yeah, they changed. It's called the DMS. It's basically how insurance diagnoses you through the system, because they have to have all those codes to make sure you have the right medical treatment. 1990 was when they changed it. It's gone through like 5 editions at that point, but
So a lot of these tools and relics were used
yes,
in treatments.
yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the hallway here, we do have more of those like patient objects. Pica is one of them. I moved right past it, but that was actually collected in 1910 by a doctor after an autopsy of a patient. She died really suddenly at like 30 years old. Still a little pretty young for 1910. And they didn't know why. So obviously they had to do an autopsy to figure out why. They found about 1,400 objects in her intestines. Anything from nails to buttons to glass. All of those things were in her at the time of that autopsy.
She ate all of
She
those.
ate all of those things because she had pica. So pica is one of those, it kind of changed in the DMS. So originally it was an eating disorder, now it's more of an obsessive compulsive thing. But basically pica is just you ingest and eat things that are not nutritionally of value. A lot of people during pregnancy will get little snippets of that for like wanting to, eat like chalk or something like that. It's very strange. It has 0 nutritional value, but they still have like that compulsion to eat it. Arthur Kraft is the artist behind most of these paintings right here and all of them in this room. Arthur Kraft was a Kansas City artist that spent about 5 weeks in our state hospital for alcoholism. So he treated lots of different things. We know so much about his stay here because he wrote a book about it. So we can obviously use all of that information because it's public domain. Some snippets of his book are in here on the wall. He's just been kind of a local phenomenon that's kind of like come back into the spotlight. This is the rest of his room.
Wow.
There's a dedication of his book here, but that's basically his observations of patients or staff. Most of those 2 are patients. I think this one's a staff member.
It's really interesting. It's really like art.
He's a very well-renowned artist, so that is the book too. He only made about 100 copies of the book, so they're pretty hard to find. We have one of them, but yeah, he made all of sketches, sculpting. Really, there's a little bit more about him here on that label, but he basically struggled with health problems, mostly we think because of mental illness and like
Self-medicating?
Thank you. Self-medicating was pretty common back then with his alcoholism. So
I wonder if he is he a collected artist? I mean, like people have his
Some
works,
people. So all of these works, we only have one, and it's downstairs. All of these are loans from people.
Oh, there, okay.
So a couple are from the art museum in town. Other ones are from local donors.
Those are really cool.
They really are.
Eerie drawings.
There's one more patient thing in the hallway, and then we can go
Sure.
basement, tunnels, all that fun stuff. This one's kind of fun. So this was about 1971. A male patient was seen sticking a piece of paper in this TV, and that's pretty strange. People don't just often stick papers in TVs. A couple of the staff members noticed that, called maintenance to figure that out, because obviously that's not a safe situation in a TV like this, because tubing causes fires and all that fun stuff. They found 525 pieces of paper inside the TV. Most of them were written on anything really. You can see there's like a map of the state hospital here. There's like random sheets of paper. This one is First Thanksgiving from the Pilgrims. There's newspaper articles. So anything really you could find. A lot of them are usually addressed to President Nixon, telling him that he is a state hospital patient and that he would like to be released from the state hospital because the state hospital has stolen all of his worldly knowledge and wealth and put them into boxcars. He lists the numbers of the boxcars. Other things are slightly more logical, like he repeats that there's 365 days in a year. This is my state hospital person, is my therapist. But these are like the box numbers. There's 2 box numbers here. We've had to mark out through some of it because he'll give his social security number. And obviously he's not around really anymore, we don't think, but just in case. But that's
really
his
cool
way of communicating with the world, apparently. It was through the TV.
So what was the purpose of this floor specifically?
This floor would have been doctor's offices. They would have had other patient rooms here, but usually this side would have housed patients, and then doctors' staffing would have been through those double doors. So they would have had like orderlies staying out there so you wouldn't.
And paranormal on this floor?
This floor is not a lot anything other than people hear sounds, a lot of like gurneys or nurses' shoes, stuff like that.
And
Along this
what's
floor.
that side?
That side is the older side. So that side has a bit more activity.
Is that where we're headed now?
That's where we're headed now.
And is this the side where the lobotomies would have been done?
Yes.
Definitely looks creepier down there than over here. Just standing down there.
Most of our signs are still original, like our keep doors locked is from the hospital. There's, this was a doctor's office, so it's got like his name plaque on it. My office downstairs was originally like an examination room because it's got the big like wide doors for wheelchairs and gurneys and stuff like that. So to our left is our Native American and World War I section right now. And then the other side is our Black archives. So in this side of the hall, there have been shadow figures reported before. A lot of people kind of speculate if it's tied to like our Native American stuff or if it's just because it's the older part of the building. Don't really know. Some strange smells like cigars have been noted over here. We kind of joke that it is our cigar man because he pops up in and out places. In the museum, he usually hangs around staffing stuff and like collections upstairs, which our upstairs is collections. Unfortunately, I can't let you into that because collection space for the museum, right? But it was the old like nurses station is right above our heads, and some of the doctor's offices and stuff up there too, like their staff kitchen. They would have had one on each floor. I'm gonna turn the lights off for you because it's super dark, but
All right.
100% dark.
So these would have been,
Told you, 100% dark.
so these would have been I'm trying to think of like the procedures where they would have been done in these
Yes.
rooms.
So they would have been in the rooms. Usually, as far as I know, historically they would have been this side, like corner rooms, because there's more space. So this room right here on the corner would have probably been one. There's a matching one on the other side.
And that would have been surgeries,
Lobotomies, anything really medically that you had to have done here.
Go figure that this is the more haunted part of this floor.
Yeah, I don't know. So we've got the tunnels and the basement. First floor is not really usually had anything in particular done. I usually keep it lit for me because I have to work down there. Some people have done like the voice box and stuff, and like my name's come up or like other different words have come up by the stairs. So more than welcome to like check out the original stairs too, but that's usually the only thing that's happened on first floor.
Yeah, we can go down to the,
We go down to the basement.
yeah. Reminds me of like,
Original flooring.
it's like a school. Ooh.
This is as dark as this floor gets. I don't know why this one is on. I cannot figure out. It's usually not on. Cannot figure out where it came on. But this is the basement. So the basement we used to talk about our farm. It's about 5,000 acres. They had everything from a dairy herd to meat, fruit, vegetables, really anything to self-sustain them. Because like I said, hospital was about 2-3 miles outside St. Joseph at that time. So they really had to have their own supplies. Most of the time, the state obviously had like a budget for them to do. Feeding 3,000 people takes a lot of stuff. Most of the time from some of those records, we've noticed that they've actually sent most of that budget back because they were so self-sufficient. So some of the things they made or used like our horse bridles, anything from like the beans and apples. Farmer John, who had a terrible farming accident, has lost a finger. They had an award-winning milking herd that had like state awards for butter. They also sold it to the town if they had any excess. So those are the milk bottles they sold them in. Lots of like swings. There's baby lambs.
And these are wheelchairs from the...
Yes. This one's about 1930s. The caning. Caning was really big in chairs then. So they made all of this stuff as well. Usually metal shop, wood shop, stuff like that. Some of the things later on too, like after the 60s is, the 1960s is really when like patient rights started to really come around and like consent and all that stuff. But you also had most of the dying off of these patient jobs because the state then had to pay you to do your work, which is great, but also kind of killed the whole self-sufficiency thing. So a lot of the time, there is still a little bit of it. Show Me Industries is one thing that came out of that. Noma Lights is a real big local Christmas light factory. Some people know it outside the state, but they would have like used some patients to test out Christmas lights, basically. The root cellars are still visible. They are basically flanking the entrance to the prison off of 36 and Farron. So you can still see them from the grounds. This is the autopsy room and morgue. So there are a couple different morgues. This is the original one to this building, and it was still operational into the 90s as like a backup for the city. So there's only 4 here. Autopsy is in there. We usually talk about this space just, you know, how death affects people or was affected at the state hospital. There's a couple headstones in here too. So like I said, about 3,000 patients actually died out here and then were not reclaimed by family. So they were buried out here. You didn't actually have to take care of your own family up until that point. So super recently where the state was like, no, you are in charge of your family. They're only numbered. The numbers corresponded to a ledger with more personal information, but they didn't want that on the headstones outside. So a lot of the time, if you lost those ledgers, you lost all of that information. So that's kind of what happened to ours. They have I think one of the original ledgers and have misplaced and or lost the rest of them. So we think there's about 3,000 out in our cemetery, but we don't 100% know. Those headstones are no longer visible either, most of them. About the 80s, the state decided to tip them and fill over so they didn't have to mow around them. Kind of sad. Yeah.
And where is this cemetery?
Cemetery is still in prison grounds.
Wow.
Because it was basically the far corner of the lot, which is still on their side. So.
But you can't visit?
You can only get to about the first 100 of them. There's a memorial, I can show you guys where that is.
Yeah.
But most of it is still behind the fence. And it's still, even though stuff that is open, you still are monitored because it is prison grounds. So you can see some of it, but not all of it. And a creek kind of runs through there too, so they think some of it has washed away. It's kind of a big mess, but.
And there are headstones in here?
Some of them, yep. There's 2 of them, or 3 of them. So that's what they would have looked like.
Just a number.
So would have been patients' numbers, sometimes doctors would have, or staff would have been out here too because they lived out here with patients. So that one's a little bit more descriptive because it was a doctor, not a patient. Wow. There's a lot of other stuff about just intentional deaths or accidental deaths that happened here. A lot of that we know, like I said, from newspapers or death certificates. So.
What do you mean intentional deaths?
Sometimes there were intentional deaths. A couple that I know offhand would have been when patients got out of restraints, or the one I remember offhand because I just researched it. There was a patient that was transferred here a day and on mopping duty. And that's when they had metal mop buckets. He hit another patient over the head with a mop bucket and killed him. That's
so
what
murders,
happened.
basically.
Yes, basically. Accidental ones, there have been some weird, a couple of patients choked on peach pits a couple of times, so that's one of them. Okay. So it's usually oh, this happened at the state hospital. Right, that one. So things like that. Or a couple of them are accidental, they were just infectious diseases because they used to keep their toothbrushes like this in wards. So obviously if somebody's sick on the top rack of that, probably everybody underneath of them is probably going to get sick. Mm-hmm. Just gravity and germs. Like I said, didn't know what germs were in 1800s. So didn't really know to not do that for sanitary reasons. They did have a specific building for like an infectious infirmary too, because things like fevers and tuberculosis and all that stuff is still pretty common. They would have segregated them from the rest of the state hospital population.
Is this an original table? Really?
That
So
is our autopsy table.
lots of autopsies done here.
I don't really know the numbers.
Looks like it was probably
This
used
says,
for embalming as well.
this says that patients would hang themselves or set themselves on fire.
There is one that they set themselves on fire, super
Oh my
depressed.
God.
So there's, like I said, a lot of them in the newspapers because they're super sensationalized
Yeah.
back in that day. So they would write about things like that. But yeah, there was, like I said, it's a little disconcerting for people because there is a like razor wire fence now and up around the buildings, but they didn't have that. And a lot of the time patients were like free to roam around or go into the city depending on your mental state, obviously, and like security reasons, and you obviously had to have evaluations for that kind of thing. They had like out on the lawn all the time. There was big swings that people could use. They had obviously the rocking chairs outside all the time. Accidents like that happen. We have a couple news stories of people actually escaping and then having to be brought back.
Wow.
Did they use this also for embalming?
Yes. So that would have been part of the practice. Yeah. So embalming kind of happened later on. Originally didn't have that or freezers to keep you around, so you really were buried within like a week of dying. So as that technology progressed, since we served really the whole northwest region of Missouri, sometimes farther away depending on like how the other 5 were being staffed, you could do things like embalm people for longer for their family to come pick them up.